Gitanjali, thank you so much for humbling my request. And over to you, telling us a little about yourself and how your journey as a crusader in the work that you're doing today started.
Thank you, and it's my pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to this. So, my journey with inclusion and my journey with even, I would say, inclusion and diversity started maybe about 20 years ago. Uh, and maybe even earlier. When I was in school and I was looking at the way I learn, I realized that the power to learn rests only with the learner. And all that one can do is give you opportunities on how you can learn. So I would actually decide how much I would pay attention in a class, and I'd go and sit there and learn. So it was very interesting for me, even as a student, to say learning spaces should be such. So my first, I would say, interaction on diversity or my work with Snehadara, I mean pre-Snehadara, stemmed from the fact that I met a lot of children who would come to me, um, and I think they would come to me with needs. They would come to me with some form of disability or the other learning need. I never knew what it was, and the not knowing was, I think, my biggest advantage. I would just know that here's somebody who learns differently and needs to be taught differently. So when I heard the word autistic for the first time, I heard it actually as artistic. And when the parents said, "Ma'am, didn't you hear me?" I said, "Autistic." And I said, "Tell me a little more." And then she said, "He's unable to speak. She's unable to speak, has social behavior challenges. She loves music and, can reproduce any song that is played." And I said, then I didn't hear it wrong. I heard it. So, that was my first even engagement with looking at this diversity. With inclusion, I think it started with Sneha. Sneha that I set up after the child Sneha, uh, who I met in a regular play home. And my first lesson on inclusion was having somebody like Sneha taught everybody else who's a 5 to a 7-year-old how to actually love and take care of each other. So for me, I would say the my biggest lesson in inclusion was actually Sneha. It's not what help Sneha needed and how we had to enable needs, learning requirements for Sneha, as much as Sneha's presence taught us such valuable things, which as a
Hmm.
society we would have never learned. And with the 6 to 8 year olds, the child that I met, our collective effort was to see how can Sneha be a part of all our learning. So all our innovations to work with a child with Down syndrome who was non-verbal, was having a lot of other comorbidities, came from the children themselves. So that was my
Hmm.
first, I think, lesson on inclusion. I may not live the life of what a parent might go through, but we've lived very closely with the journeys of the children that we have worked with. And for me, Sneha is
This is
me. Sneha is,
extremely
I mean,
amazing for
that's
me
it.
to understand, Gitanjali, because I come across people who have very less compassion and empathy, right? And not everybody is as compassionate. What took out of you to come out in this direction and work in this field with so much of dedication?
See, I think as a 12, 13-year-old, I would feel a bit guilty for being privileged.
Hmm.
So I think as a part of our learnings and, going through Bal Vihar classes and, just the general discourses and dialogues we would go to,
Hmm.
my immediate thing was, if we are able, if we are privileged, there's a reason why. I don't know why there are the haves and the have-nots, but I know that there are the haves. The only way, the reason today I sit with a privilege is because I have to pay it forward. So that was very
Hmm.
clear for me. And that was very clear even as a child. So if I was in 10th grade, I would be teaching 7th, 8th grade students. I would say something that I cracked can be
Hmm.
given up because everybody doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. So I think
Hmm.
that was something which was very clear for me. While I went through my own things of studying masters in biochemistry and going through that till I reached wanting to work with it, it was extremely clear for me
Hmm.
that if we are privileged, it's only because we have to actually pay this forward. And that's been
Amazing.
resonating, I think, every choice of what I have done in my life. Yeah.
Now, paying it forward is the key, right? And that's the, I think, the largest leveler we have in the society. Just that feeling of sharing what you have, maybe in excess, or that part of you with the rest of those around. And it doesn't have to be at a big scale. So beautifully put there, Gitanjali. And that brings me to the next question about Snehadhara. And you have to tell us a lot more about how the journey with Snehadhara started. You said it was inspired by this little girl, Sneha, who taught, I think, more than, or who rather gave more than she took.
So, Snehadhara, for me, I had never in my life imagined that I would set up an organization. And if given a choice today and you ask me that question, would you do it? There are days when I said, don't, I don't know why I decided to, kind
Yeah.
of do that. But I mean, having said that, there are times I'd say lifetime after lifetime, I'll come back to do just this. So, Snehadhara for me was clearly a call for action. When I met
Hmm.
Sneha and her parents, I learned from the parents that the child may not live very long. We have a prognosis of 14 to 15 years, maybe. And till the child is there, I want to give the child the opportunity of being with other children. It was
Hmm.
simple. So when she was in that play home, the parents, Rajita and Sunil, went through the journey of saying, we'll find a regular school for her. And I said, okay, I mean, it didn't seemingly look different for me to say a child goes to a school today, may not be too much for learning, but goes because that's the social world of a child where there are other children. So it began with that. I went through this year, the search, so called to say, with Rajita and Sunil. With
Hmm.
every school, there was something or the other.
Hmm.
We're not ready, we're not equipped, we can't guarantee that there's something that we can do for the child. You have to bring a shadow teacher, and I mean all of that. And the
Hmm.
ask was simple: give my child a space, the child will learn. And a child with Down syndrome today may definitely looks visibly different, but has a lot of social skills. And if I do not put her in a social environment, even that is going to become challenging for the child. So it was a
Hmm.
very clear math, and I was wondering why people don't get that.
Hmm.
So then when we did this, I came back home, I think on it was November 30th 2012, and I said it can't be, there may be so many children like Sneha who are not
Hmm.
getting a space. So I was very clear. I said, a house where four of us live is not as valuable as putting this house out, selling it if required, where a lot more children can benefit from this. So at that time, of course, we had two young our girls were young, EMI and everything else. I just told my husband, I need things that are there and that I can liquidate. If there's something that you can give me, jewelry, anything, give me an initial 5 lakhs to start an organization. And at that
Hmm.
time, we didn't even have these Google, like you had to go and sit in a cyber cafe. And I Googled, non for profit, how to start. And I got three options: trust, society. That time it was Section 25. I said, society, chai ka naam hai. I don't want that. Section 25 sounds very legal. I love the word trust. I want people to only trust that we can
Hmm.
build a society that is loving. It was as basic as that, with no background in what dynamics of an organization. And I then realized we need trustees, we need to get people together, and the rest is history. So every step that was taken
Hmm.
was like the next step I needed to take. So when we
Hmm.
set up a center, then I was also very clear, because I was coming from a teaching background and I felt one size fits all will never work. Children learn differently. We don't want McDonald's burgers which look the same everywhere in the world. So
Hmm.
the inputting has to be different. Everybody's learning needs are different. We create opportunities and give the power to the learner. That was very clear for me. And
Hmm.
what better than working with the arts? Because I
Hmm.
felt music, movement, dance, theater, storytelling, and learning
Absolutely.
is an all body visceral experience. So it brought together the idea of arts and psychology and maybe philosophy. For me, as philosophy is how I see life, how I see the preciousness of life, till wherever it is, the abundance in all of these things. And then I went on to work back in the same play home that I met Sneha, and set up an art based therapy center. I was also training in art based therapy at that point of time.
Hmm.
And then it went on to say we have to start redefining this. And it was a tough journey because people hadn't worked. How can, okay, what do you do? So arts meaning people know it as three mountains, one sun, two crows globally. I don't think we have a better definition of arts.
I
Or
swear.
schools know it, and it's, schools know it as an annual day performance. And I would say no. The
Hmm.
language with which two people are communicating is through a non-threatening language of expression. And
Hmm.
that could be singing, that could be stories, that could be, visual art. So
Absolutely.
it was challenging because the methodology was also very new. But
Hmm.
then it went on to say, let's use that as a language.
Hmm.
A few years into it, I felt therapy has a connotation of treatment. By
Hmm.
saying every child with needs require treatment won't work, because every
Hmm.
parent is going anywhere between 5 to 7 therapies today. We're
Yeah.
treating the child part by part when we are multidimensional in nature. So I felt it has to be something that brings both together. So Snehadhara has actually brought both together. And now we went on after about 7, 8 years of, meaning 5 years of into this. I said, no, therapy has to get replaced by giving people opportunities to feel belonged and together. So let's use arts practices and let's define the inclusion, because I think we've got that inclusion definition
Hmm.
itself is become either rights based. It's not talking about many other dimensions today that I think. So I think I take pride in saying the arts practices for inclusion, which is a very tailored, curated program that we run as a certification, is where we found what we're really going to be set out to do.
God, these 12 years, and I was just listening to you, sort of narrate your journey, must have not been easy because you're talking about discovery at each step, right? I mean, I'm able to visualize because you're doing it with not just one child, you're doing it with children, many of them, and many of them having different needs. But Gitanjali, tell me one thing. The hardest part for you must have definitely been in the beginning, right? Because in all my conversations with guests that I've had here, they've said that the first step was the block that they had, even in the mindset of the parents, right?
Oh,
To
yeah.
encourage their own children to come forward and get access to whatever is available around them, right? Uh, do you feel the same way? Did you feel that you had to, uh, you know, fight these battles with the parents of children with special needs to encourage them to bring their children forward to you?
I say it very jokingly, saying, you give me 10 other children, 20 other children, don't give me a single parent.
I
But
swear.
honestly, Monisha, for me, I think the motivation to hang in here and do this beside all its challenges. I mean, if I sit down to list the challenges, unbelievable, one would think this could be a challenge. Until recent challenges that we've had of, being told not to come into a public railway station with children and all that. For me, I felt the journey of a parent is something none of us can understand. So I always give them, despite how difficult sometimes it is, I feel the empathy or the understanding for what a parent today is going through is, I place that very, very high. And that actually is not a deterrent, but it
Hmm.
allows me to look at so many other dimensions that we are not able to see. And I feel one of the biggest things that Snehadara would like to do is also, if you're talking about awareness, sensitization, we cannot discount the psychosocial health of a parent, of a child, of
Absolutely.
any parent. So I think I would hats off to the parents. When parents tell me we can't do it for one child, you're doing it for so many children, I feel it's a very non-linear, disproportionate comparison, because you're living the child's life,
Hmm.
making decisions for the child, making choices and going through your own conflict. So I place parents in a very high pedestal. The fact that they haven't been easy, they've questioned it, we do all these things, and at the end of it, a parent would say, I sent 2 handkerchiefs and only one came back. Where were the
Hmm.
3 diapers used? But I'd keep telling everybody else, we can never tell a parent that I understand what you're going through, because we never can. Even as a parent, I can't understand. And I
Hmm.
think for me, when parents come and say, what after me? We need a space. That what after me question is going to loom over every parent. But for a parent of a child, so the Snehadara, in its residential model is your what after me question. I'm going to get you to answer when you're here. You can see that the child can adapt to various situations so that the primary caregiver, if it is not you, is going to be somebody who has lesser to do for the child. So you have to start believing in the child. And my heart goes out to parents when you're fighting a disability, you're fighting your own conflict, you're trying to figure all of these things out, you're fighting a system. It's disproportionate if anybody working with special needs today say parents are problematic. You've tried everything possible to make the best available for your child.
Absolutely.
And you're also going through, I hope I've made the right choices. Like, when people leave Snehadhara, I feel terrible. I feel like now the child is actually, making moves. Don't move the child out. But I feel, I tell a parent, no matter where you're going, we will always make sure that we are a part of that journey of the child, whether or not you want to include us.
We have counselors for everything, right? We have counselors for mental health. We have counselors for people who are getting out of severe ailment, be it an accident, injury, etc. But caregiver counseling there is a huge vacuum in the space in our country today, and I have lived through it, and so I can speak a little more vehemently about it because it's like suddenly your life is pivoting. You have a medical ailment in your child. You have nobody to go, no one place who can say, okay, you know what, here, sit down, let us find out the various aspects and deal with it. Deal with this subject as objectively as possible, because everybody is path finding at that point of time. And I think most of the caregiver journeys reach that point of exhilaration and sweat because they are tired of running around looking for answers. And very few people point us in the right direction, right? Saying that, okay, Monisha, you have to do this first, that second, third, this. And that is where I feel the blockages develop, right? Because of just the fact that you're tired at the end of the day, and you're having other responsibilities too. So thank you, Gitanjali, for actually saying that, it's not a deterrent, because that is where problem solving actually begins. Even before you deal with the person who has disability, start with counseling the parents of that, that individual, because that is where the person actually comes from, right? And unless you nurture the ground, there's no point in just tending to the seed, right? But thank you so much for saying that. Tell us a little more about, I heard the word residential program that Snehadhara is offering. Why don't you tell us a little more about this? This sounds interesting because now we're talking more about having a holistic approach.
Just to add what you just said, it's not about counseling the parent. When a parent comes to me and says, what can we do for the child? My answer is simple. The best gift you can give your child is start taking care of yourself. And I think the residential program came as a solution to say that even if it's going to mean 4 days a week, that the children are with us and the parent is able to find some time to just gather themselves, it is worth every day of those 4 days. Because to be able to do what you're doing day in and day out with its complexities, Snehadhara began with that model actually to say, let's get them. And when the children are there, trust me, they have their own ecosystem. These children need peers who they choose, not whom we choose. Like, we have friends coming into our houses. But for a child in the autism spectrum, the child is not inviting a friend by virtue of choices that we make. So the residential program is coined. It's built in the outskirts of Snehadhara in Bangalore, in Nelamangala. It's built like an off-the-grid, a very beautifully retreatish space that we have built, where there's a capacity of about 24 children to stay. When I say children, my oldest is a 42-year-old today. It's a community kitchen. The aspirationers will run this space together. The adults will run this space together. So it's a very well designed program where there are art based interventions happening through the day, mapping it to each child's goals and requirements. Fair to say that the children who are coming to Snehadhara may not be able to be a part of a regular schooling system in terms of their ability. Some may not even be able to look at livelihood and employability, or even like businesses set up for them, but we can still think about different models of what we can do with them. Like the community kitchen is run with the children, so even if it's going to be doing things that meet their therapeutic needs. So if I want sensory integration today, the best lab for me is the kitchen. It's not in an OT or in a PT room, it's in the kitchen. there is smell, there is textures. It is addressing it's addressing the need of the child, which is food. So I'm not looking at things which are so remote. I see these equipments for the child only when I go for a session. I think we've challenged that, because learning has to be everywhere. You have to find your tools everywhere. So Monday to Thursday, the children stay on campus. I mean, the group stays on campus. We also have tied up with the neighboring government schools. So the Halla goal has been, if you are not getting the children to school, not allowing the children to school, I'll bring the schools here. So we work with the government schools. We take the children and go there. We bring the government school children to work with it, so that there is a group, because I feel this has to happen only when society plays its role. And it's only one, but there is nothing called a group to be included and a group that's including. That's why I feel we have to redefine inclusion. It's about bringing together, and we have a lot as society to gain in this. In fact, for children who are with diverse needs, they're quite fine where they are. They're not demanding of anything. What we have to do is so much that we have to gain as a society. So that's the program. Then Friday, Saturday, Sundays, that space is opened up for training. So the overnighters began with the idea of saying, let's take care of the needs of the parents, as well as the children are able to manage. There isn't a single child who gets what is the food that's going to be on the table. There's no pre-intimation for any child. There's no parent who has stayed even a single day with the child. We take the medical requirements that are there. We're medicating the children if required. That is taken care of. It's a very live program in terms of updates in Google Sheet. It's a very small group where parents are right now there. It's a very well run model. I'm waiting for people to just pick this up, because I have no issues with copywriting. I feel everybody has a right to copy. Lift it, make it your own, and run it. Give spaces like this, whether you call it assisted caregiving or however. There should be a space where a child or an adult feels, I go to this space some part of the week and I'm back here home some part of the week. Because that practice of staying away is something that parents also should witness. That the child, and I keep telling parents, no news is good news. You haven't heard from us, we're all doing fine.
Do you foresee, Gitanjali, that you will someday have individuals with different disabilities who will actually go to work and come back to the space to live?
I'm in fact encouraging parents to say, let's set up some things that the children can do. Say, for example, because it's a community kitchen, pickles are made for the kitchen use, papads are made for the kitchen use. We could always look at setting up spaces, building spaces. If you're able to do that in the name of the child. So you have a buddy. See, the child, your big worry is, if I'm not around, who's going to understand my child? So I'm saying create buddies. Look at opportunities of livelihood, which is buddy livelihood opportunities. Like simplistically, if there is affordability, it's in the outskirts of Bangalore. I'd say pick up the land, set it up, build it, run it like a PG. If you want to keep one room for this adult, the child who will grow up to be into an adult. Keep that stream of supporting that child on, and let's work with that. So we have to start thinking about different models. And I'm thinking they can. They need people where I take the children everywhere. These adults are taken everywhere, be it a mall, be it a store, because I would wonder, why aren't we seeing children like these outside? And when I would hear, it's very difficult to see. For the parent, it is very difficult. A child is having a meltdown. How do you work with the child in a situation like that? I think it's very possible. And I've also seen it, which has been another thing which we think people do not understand the children. We're just caught up in our busy lives. It's going to require us to invite them to say, look, you belong to this social world. This child belongs to your social world. I've also met the most wonderful people who have come out of the way to buddy this child or buddy this adult. So I feel it's the appeal has to come in from saying, like, it's what's in this for me. Like we started with caregiving, right? There'll always be a role in our lives where I am going to be either receiving or giving care. So there is something in this for everyone.
But this has been an age-old tradition, right? Donate a meal at an orphanage, go and donate books, to underprivileged children, and we call that act of compassion and empathy that's been going on for years together, feed the poor, etc. But just imagine if society can look at a more evolved way of creating impact, right? And we don't think of economic barriers as the only form of challenge that exists in our developing nations, so as to speak, but look at communities which require that bit of upliftment. And upliftment could just happen by going and contributing your time and developing this buddyship, right, in environments like this, and getting more and more volunteers to come and contribute, and I think somewhere upskilling, making them evolve with ideas that come out which can create sustainable livelihoods, and all can come from so many smart young entrepreneurs who are out there in the society, trying to carve their niches, just by including, and this is a big call to action for young age entrepreneurs, where if you can become a buddy to uh, people with challenges, right, and figure out the skills that they have and include them back in your action and work. Imagine what a beautiful alliance we're going to be creating, right? What you are doing, Gitanjali, is holding it together, right? Holding it together for children and individuals with disabilities, upskilling them, giving them the sensitization that is required to adapt to the environments that exist around them. But I think this call to action is to the environment outside them, to kind of get sensitized and come and include yourself in places like Snehadhara. Any other call to action that you have?
Like I oftentimes say, we have the best solutions, we've got the problem statement wrong. We
Hmm.
spent 10 years in creating a model and say it's exclusively the Snehadhara way. It's not exclusively the Snehadhara way. You have to be able to take this and integrate that into existing learning protocols wherever it is. And I think that is something I would aspire for a model like us to say, pick it up. If this is working, this has worked for us. All SOPs are in place. We work like a corporate in terms of having things in its place. Take it, run it. We have to have more spaces like this. We have to have more experiments like these, more explorations like this, is what I'd say for the model that we're working with for the residential. Besides this, we're working with all groups that are going to require psychosocial, where we're investing in psychosocial well-being. Because if you're talking about society playing its role, then every mind has to be polished, every heart has to be won. And I think
Absolutely.
from that point of view, we need to be working with everybody, because I feel that that's the beneficiaries are like there.
Gitanjali, one very basic question. I suppose I am somebody who's interested, and I don't look at me as a mother of somebody with special needs, but just look at me as an independent entrepreneur who wants to contribute by creating source of livelihood for individuals who are being nurtured at your organization, right? Is there a way in which entrepreneurs can come forward and connect with Snehadhara and create some sort of upskilling method or employability opportunity?
Is really possible. Like there are adults who are on campus, and I'm sure more would be there. While there are behavioral issues, socially, there could be some challenges. But today, if there's an entrepreneur who says, I want to do this, you come with your entire team actually. Because to be able to understand what is the capacity of the child
Hmm.
and to or the adult, sorry, and to fit an opportunity for the adult is really possible, but it's
Hmm.
going to require you to invest some time in
Hmm.
curating something that's going to work for, like Snehatara itself has hired back a lot of our interns and people with neurodiverse needs. We have about 3 people who are there's one adult in the autism spectrum who today handles everything, who works on just a template.
Hmm.
So
Excellent.
there is a possibility for us to create those opportunities. There's also a possibility for us to, but it's going to require an investment of time to
Hmm.
understand the diversity, because
Understood.
75% of them are non-verbal. They don't have functional language. So we have to
Hmm.
begin with a common language of, getting onto the same plane. And in this case, it can only be if you have a lived experience of being there, being with the child. We can map you to a child who's there or an adult who's there and work this thing out. That's very possible. Right now we're doing it with a lot of interns from colleges who
Hmm.
sign up for a very definite internship program, and we
Hmm.
take them through that. So I think that
Excellent.
there are
Excellent.
steps. Yeah.
So, Gitanjali, one thing that was intriguing me is that who are the gates open for at Snehadhara, and if you could answer that in a very, holistic manner, in the sense that do you have any criteria, any filters that you have while you are creating this internal society?
Yeah, so the philosophy of Snehadhara is one, we don't look at any assessment report. So the disability or the diagnosis uh, is not at all a criteria for us. And that is how it would continue to be. Because I feel if you're working with, say, a child with Down syndrome, and there's a child or an adult in the autism spectrum, they both have something to learn and give with each other. So there is no filters when it comes to age. Our youngest, I think in the one-on-one program, the youngest is a 5 year old and the oldest is a 42-year-old, because and that's how it has been. There are the only requirement for us is if there is a medical requirement, like a clinical requirement in terms of medications and other things. Those are the only questions that we ask, but otherwise it is give us the child is a part of the program for 8 weeks. We
Mhm.
work with the child and then we come back to you to say this is how we've experienced the child and this is how we think we can work together with the child. So there is no criteria. The philosophy like this has got many parents to not take seriously, saying they don't want to know the assessment report. They don't have special educators. They do not have, physiotherapists. It would never be like that. An admission that comes in for 8 weeks, we say, don't give us anything. Even the form would ask you, what are the strengths of the child? The way you understand the strengths of the child, weaknesses as in areas that you think we need to
Hmm.
work on the way you see it. But after 8 weeks, we're in a position to tell the parent, this is how we have experienced the child. And we feel this is the area that we're going to start working with the child. And they
Ah.
continue with us. The curriculum is very, like, because I'm also working with art based interventions, the science of the arts is what has worked for us. So there are goals that are mapped. I mean, it's not all about just a nice space to be and feel good.
Hmm.
There are goals that are mapped. There are curriculums that are designed for the children to meet their individual and group goals. The
Hmm.
focus is on emotional, social, and inclusion domain goals. So, if this child has to be made to be taken to a government school today with me, and when I say child, it could be a 14-year-old who's a 6 footer who's non-verbal. I
Hmm.
have to make sure that the child is prepared enough to be able to be in that environment so that an
Hmm.
exception is not created in that environment for the child just by virtue of the child being
Right.
different.
In terms of uh, having children with different levels of abilities, let me put it this way, because I'm sure you experience this firsthand. There could be some children who are, little more uh, alert, functional, if I had to use those
Yes.
words, while the others are, maybe at a different level. How do you deal with them when you are addressing a group of children together? Or do you have like different, groups made even amongst the children who are with you when you're working with them?
There's groups made based on the abilities, based on their individual and group goals.
Hmm.
But I've been a very strong, what you say, I have a very strong viewpoint on just vertical integration and integrating people with different learning abilities together. And classic is siblings. You know, when a music teacher would come and teach one of the two siblings in the house, the other one outside who's not attending the class learns faster. So there's a lot that happens in learning. So why do
Hmm.
I want to differentiate that here? And I
Hmm.
also feel, Monisha, it's the same thing that I said. If a child is a little more abled, if one could say, I
Hmm.
would teach that child that they have a responsibility of paying it forward. So they
Absolutely.
become the buddy for this child. And I think that's
Absolutely.
the appeal, because otherwise it'll be one or two people who'll try and be change makers and will be motivational in talks. But it's not that. You're able to do this. This child is, so this is a child on a wheelchair on campus. A child who's not on a wheelchair's responsibility is to make sure that for every session, motoring the child around is your responsibility.
Absolutely. You are
And that's
so spot on. You are so spot on, Gitanjali, and I want all the mainstream education experts, people who run schools, colleges, all of these people to listen to the way that you're speaking, because, they are. actually creating brick and mortar silos, right? Saying that this is a space not meant for children with challenges, and this is exactly, I think, where barriers are getting created in the society, and uh, separating children who are born with empathy and kindness to look after one another, and they are being thrown into the world as finished products or machines to operate as ableist minds, disregarding people with challenges around them. And I think that is where I wish models like this, right? Just the thought process that you can have a mini Snehadhara in a school, in a college, where children with various disabilities get to function along with children with not those challenges, right? And that is how we can make the society a little more equal. Have you reached out to mainstream education, let's say, bodies, and tried to explore the possibility of having this in as a curriculum in the mainstream system, or has that been a little far-fetched? And because it requires, I know, a lot of
We have a lot of training programs that we do with teachers and educators. My own theory of this, which is definitely going to put me into trouble, is to say, get the special educators out and see how inclusion will happen.
Hmm.
Because I feel today, if I have a child with special needs born to me in my house, I'm not equipped as a special educator, and I'm not going to say I'm not equipped to take care of this child, but I can take care of the older sibling. So I
Hmm.
feel if you're talking about a change, we're talking about a systemic level change like that. While skilling is required, it is going to be, I feel the major problem is, instead of looking at these voluntary programs, and going and gifting jams and pickles on one specific day, and teaching children, sensitizing them about diversity, use your all senior school programs. It should be made compulsory that an
Absolutely.
8th and a ninth grade child is going to buddy another child within the school. That way, the pressure is not on the teachers.
Absolutely.
Because I
Absolutely.
respond to a peer much, much better. Attrition is never a problem because these
Hmm.
children will support each other, and they'll
Exactly.
do it far better because you're teaching them, you're empowering both of them in this. I feel we're not using, it's never a shortage of resources, we're not
Hmm.
using our resources correctly.
If I
So,
just have to add something here, we're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion today in workplaces, aren't we? We're talking about getting, people with challenges, individuals with challenges, employing them in mainstream workforces. But look at how ironical this is, right? At the education level, you're separating the crowd. And then you're now talking about creating inclusion in the workplaces where you have depleted, individuals of empathy, the psychosocial way of thinking that is required, where they are sensitive to even hiring people with disabilities and then accommodating them in mainstream spaces. And I think that is where we need to, as a society, when we want to approach these goals, right, and in a more holistic way, we have to look at education system also getting involved in this manner, and not having to talk about having a separate model out of the brick and mortar structures, but actually incorporating this in the mainstream, where people like you can share the expertise and say that, what, this is what we bring to the table. Let us create this culture right from the early education level, right? And make this compulsory, like you rightly said, make this compulsory where you're teaching how a child with so-called fewer disabilities, so to speak. Because if you ask me, I don't think any human being has any perfect constitution, where we are teaching them to buddy somebody with challenges, right? And that is where inclusion needs to, I think, somewhere come in, because only then we can carry it forward to workplaces and other aspects of the society. So, while I wrap this up, Gitanjali, I think it's only apt for me to ask, where do you think inclusion begins, as per your understanding and observation?
see, my way of answering this question would be, inclusion is not a noun, inclusion is a verb. It is the practice of inclusion that we need to do almost every day. Inclusion begins with including yourself in whatever form that you are in its totality. Include your vulnerable self, include your weaknesses, include your challenges. I think inclusion is like it has to, it's an everyday thing for everyone because there's no other way for that. And I feel if you have to make steps and what is crucial for us as a society and why this is crucial, there's something in this for everyone. Be it
Absolutely.
corporates, be it professionals, be it parents, there is something because when inclusive societies are able to uh, embrace each other, we actually have comprehensive solutions for complex problems. There's no other way to do this. If
Absolutely.
there is social cohesion, when everyone is feeling included, everyone is feeling valued, then we are promoting harmony. And when there is harmony, there's mutual respect. So I for me, it's seemingly a very basic thing, which is like a requirement for each one of us, like food, clothing, shelter, inclusion. I would say it like that
Absolutely.
because if you're talking about economic growth today, inclusion boosts economic growth. See, when everyone has equal access to education, when everyone has employability opportunities, it
Exactly.
maximizes productivity. It's a
Exactly.
thriving economy. I don't know why we're not able to, think about it like that. Human rights and dignity. We have seen only societies prosper then we
Hmm.
feel that there is opportunities for everybody. So I think from that point of view, um, the
Absolutely.
mental health of a society can change today. It's much required. I think just looking at how fragmented we are, there is something in this for everybody.
Hmm.
There is no group that needs to be included specifically.
It's not a
There is something
separatist movement.
for
Absolutely.
everybody.
Absolutely.
Compassion and empathy has to be taught and practiced like a skill.
Hmm.
Like if you want to do that, you want to work out, you want like a perfect six pack or a size zero, you're working out at the gym. It's an
Hmm.
everyday workout. And trust me, we will get a society where the only thing we know is love. And
Absolutely.
it is really possible. We are inherently compassionate. If there is
Absolutely.
somebody shipping in front of me, I will reach out to help you. We don't even know it. We are subconsciously, we're all wired to love. We've just got caught up in what we're doing. There is something in this for everybody. Everybody has to start this every day, starting today for every day. It's not an external one day I do. Like when people call me to say, speak on disability day and all, I'll say, no, I'm not going to do it on one day. This is every day. This is awareness
Absolutely.
every day. And
Absolutely.
yeah, that's what I would say. But yes, there is, I mean, on a very positive note, we are waking up to this, Monisha, and I know the power of a collective. We can change, we can write history. It's time to write that history and write it quickly because there's so much that needs to be done, and we just have to huddle and hold each other through get
Absolutely.
together.
Thank you so much, Gitanjali, for doing what you have been doing. I know this is not a, one discussion ends it all and puts it all together kind of a chat, but this is one of the many that we can have in days to come. And I think it's only apt that, we have platforms to share narratives like this, because social media is a hugely powerful tool. I completely believe in it. I completely believe in technology. And I think with technology making advances, and with good AI coming in, I feel that more voices being heard will actually reflect itself to many, many more listeners, right? So thank you so much. And till we meet soon, you take care of yourself and keep touching lives. That's what I tell everyone. Thank you so much, Gitanjali, for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.